Okay, lesson 6.7, we're talking about solving inequalities by multiplication or division. And we should know our inequality symbols by now, but just a refresher, they go less than, greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. If you're still struggling to know what your symbols are, I really strongly recommend you're working on that. Okay, just some graphing tip reminders that open circles are used to indicate a greater than or less than because the number is not included in the solution set. And a closed circle is used to indicate a greater than or equal to, and a less than or equal to because the number is included in the solution set. We are using the flip and switch rules, so when the variable started on the right side of the inequality, switch the variable and the number so that the variable is on the left side, then flip the inequality symbol. This will make it easier to graph. And that's flip it, switch it, rearrange it. Okay, so here's where things get a little confusing because you have the song that you have to flip it, switch it to make the variable on the left side, but we also have another reason that we sometimes will flip the symbol but not the numbers. So to get C by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by -4. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. So I have C, but here's my song. When you multiply or divide by a negative number, you got to flip it, you've got to flip it. Yes, you've got to flip your sign, cha-cha-cha. So as you can see, I divided by -4. So that means I've got to flip it, I've got to flip it. 24 divided by -4 is -6. I circle it, and that's my answer. So then I come over here and I graph. I have -6. Lower than that would be -7, and higher than that would be -5. And I'm going to do a closed or an open circle. I'm sorry, open circle on -6. And I'm going to shade that to the right. And it would usually be on the number line, but I forgot to use a color. Okay, I'm trying to get W by itself. So to do that, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. Here's where people will get confused sometimes. -12 is negative, but I'm not dividing by a negative number, I'm dividing by a positive number. So this symbol stays the same, and I get W is greater than or equal to -4. And then I graph it, and I have -4, -3, -5. And then I'm going to do a closed circle at -4. We're talking about numbers that are greater than -4, so I'm going to shade to the right. Ooh. Okay, -2/3 x is less than or equal to 12. I'm going to divide by -2/3. I also could multiply by the reciprocal. They are the same action because when I divide by a negative, or when I divide by a fraction, I flip it. So I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal on the other side just to show both options. And I divided by a negative number, so I've got to flip it. And then I just take 12 over 1 times -3/2. And I say, can this go into 2? Or does 2 go into this? 6 times and 1. So x is greater than or equal to -18. I'm going to graph it. I have -18 on this side, -19 on this one, and -17. And I do a closed circle at -18. Shade it to the right. Okay, I have Z divided by 3 is greater than -2. To get rid of the divide by 3, I'm going to multiply by 3. What you do to one side, you must do to the other. So I have Z is greater than -2 times 3 is -6. So I come over here and I do -6, -7, and -5. Pick a new color and do an open circle at -6. Shade it to the right. Okay, I have 3 is less than -x/4. So I want to get rid of the negative while I get rid of the 4. So I'm going to multiply by -4. And what you do to one side, you must do to the other. So 3 times -4 is -12. Is less than x. Oh, nope, I made a mistake because I multiplied or divide by a negative number. I got to flip it. So I have negative 12 is greater than x, but I always want my variable on the left side because it makes it easier. It's etiquette for reading and when you're graphing, so I have x is less than negative 12. So then when I go to graph it, I know that my answer is going to be any number that is less than negative 12. And so I am going to do an open circle on negative 12, shaded to the left. Okay, I'm trying to get b by itself, and that's being divided by 4, so I'm going to multiply by 4. And I'm going to cross reduce, so this becomes a 1 and this becomes a 2. This cancels out, and I have b is greater than 2. So I make my graph, and I have 2, 3, and 1. And then I'm going to do an open circle at 2, shaded to the right. Okay, your family budgets $160 to spend on fuel for a trip. How many times without going over the budget can they fill the car's gas tank if it costs $25 each time that they fill it up? So we're going to take 25 times the number of times they fill it up, and we don't know what that is, so we're going to do X. And we need to be under $160. If we go over, we've gone over budget. So we have 25X is less than 160. And then to solve for X, we just divide by 25 on both sides. And I have X is less than, and I get 6.4 fill-ups. Like when I do 160 divided by 25, that says that I can fill up the gas tank 6.4 times. So I'm going to say that it's X is less than 6. But really it could be X is less than or equal to 6 as well, because that 0.4 allows me to do it at least that 6th time. Because it could, sorry, this whole time it should have been less than or equal to, because it could have been reached exactly $160. So you can round your answer or you can leave it as a decimal. Ling earns $8 per hour working at the zoo. Write and solve an inequality that can be used to find how many hours she must work in a week to earn at least $120. So she makes $8 for every hour she works. So we're going to multiply by how many hours she works. And that is at least $120. So she could make $130. So we're going to do greater than or equal to $120. And then we divide both sides by 8. And we get X is greater than or equal to, and 120 divided by 8, she must work at least 15 hours. I circle it, and that's my answer.